So we're looking at Classlink today, everyone, and how we can use Classlink in our classrooms to help streamline the process of accessing our applications. What we're also going to do is flip it around and look at it from an administrative point of view. How can we use our BenQ panels, and how can we use Classlink to share our analytics to a board and do things in that way? So the first step in all of this is going to be getting signed into our platform. We have a few different ways you can sign in. What I'm going to be looking at right now is, hey, we use Active Directory for everything in our district, and I'm just going to sign in really quickly. We also support QR codes, sign in with Google, and sign in with O365. But I get signed in, and what in the world just popped up? This is actually one of our methods of multi-factor authentication. As we all know, MFA is really, really hard in a school district. And it's even harder when you start having the scary thought of MFA for our students. Some of us don't even want to hear that. So one of the goals that we had at Classlink is how can we make it more digestible for kids, and how can we make it more fun? Well, one of the ways we can make it more fun is make it a game. You can have kids or you can use our picture MFA where a kid will select their favorite image, and then every time they sign in, they'll be presented with some options, and they'll go find their image. We're currently in Texas right now at TCEA, so you have to know I picked football as my image, because for those of you all who live in Texas, football's pretty king here. So football was my image. It did my multi-factor authentication. It took me right into my platform. What we see here now is a list of all of our SSO applications. Our environment's a little different right now because I am an administrator, a teacher, and a student all at once. So I'm going to switch to my teacher environment real quick, and I see a little bit less. This could be maybe a math teacher or a 4th grade teacher or a 12th grade history teacher, right? It could be anyone. Depending on who I am, I'm going to see the applications that I need to see, okay? So if today I am that math teacher, the 4th grade math teacher, and we're going to work in BrainPop, it's as easy as clicking that BrainPop button. Excuse me. It's going to load, it's going to run those SSO connections, and what do you know? I didn't have to sign in, and it knows who I am. Hi, Vince, we're ready to get the day started. We're ready to roll. I can exit out of that. We're done with BrainPop, and I need to move to a new platform. Maybe the next thing I need to access today is HMH. We're going to get into some textbooks. I know it's not everybody's favorite, but we got to learn from somewhere, right? And so we're going to get in some textbooks. We're going to read. It's going to do that SSO connection. And what do you know? I'm in once again. It knows who I am, and I don't have to use their username and password. We're trying to be quick. We're trying to be efficient here, right? As much as that efficiency helps the teacher, where it really shines is with those students, with those little kids that might be on their iPads or their Chromebooks or their laptops. Right? We don't want them having to sign into multiple platforms all day. We just want that one-click access. If we also, sometimes we want to jump into a little bit different of a look. Everything is showing right now. What if I only want my apps that are specific to the class that I'm currently in to show? That's where our My Classes comes into play. What My Classes is doing is it's going to filter out the applications based on the class for a student or teacher. So if I'm in my health class and I jump in and we go to the app section, these are the apps that I used for that health class. These are what are rostered through that health class, and I don't see everything at once. Maybe there is a news article that I want to share about healthy eating habits, or maybe I want to share a link to a Google Drive PowerPoint. I guess a slide deck, that's what it's called. I can quickly share that with my students by adding a custom app, giving it a name, and giving it a URL. Once I select an icon, that will show up on my student's screen, and at any time, I could then quickly remove it if it's not needed. Let's flip this around, and maybe let's look at from the point of view of I'm not currently teaching my classroom, but maybe I'm having a discussion for an ARD or a parent-teacher conference, and I need to talk a little bit about that student's usage. I can jump down into activity, and I can go, all right, we're talking about Miss Abbott here. What have they been spending all their time in? They're spending all their time just sitting in Google Drive. That's not what they're supposed to be doing, right? I check another one. Okay, this student's been in a little bit more platform. They're in Nearpod for a few hours a day. They're doing their Khan Academy and typing club like they used to. This is just real quick, actionable data for directly in the hands of our teachers. What this is using is it's pulling this data from our larger back end of analytics data for the administrator. But this is only what the students that the teachers have access to. They can view the data for those students alone, right? So we're being very specific on data sharing. We're being very specific. We want to make sure we're not violating FERPA by giving access to student data to teachers who are not supposed to have it, right? What if I jump out of this environment and I look at things from the point of view of an administrator? We're going to kind of reset the stage here, and we're going to pretend that I am a curriculum instructor and you're on my board. I'm presenting to a board of trustees now. We're at a board meeting, and what's being discussed is the massive amount of applications that we have as a district. And we really need to look at usage, and we really need to start evaluating that and making decisions. And so we need real good actionable usage analytics, and I need to be able to present it. Well, that's when I roll out one of the panels out into the conference room, and I start showing our analytics that Classlink can offer. We can look at login times, how often we're logging in, our total launches of applications. If I keep scrolling, I can see my top applications really quickly. We're getting great usage of our Canvas platform, right? What's really neat is if I have multiple schools, I can come in here and I can compare my schools. Let's say we take Classlink High School and we take, actually, let's not do that. Let's take some of our elementary schools here. There it is. What is really neat about this is I can start making some comparisons on my different schools. Granted, we have some student count differences between our schools here, but what I can do is I can scroll down and I can see what's being used. If we're getting really, really great math scores in one of my districts but not the others, or one of my schools but not the others, I can see how application usage can compare, and maybe I can make some decisions based off of that on what apps I should use. If we continue to move down, we get to some cost analysis. What Classlink is doing is it's going to track your unique users for an application and then use that to use the math problem to figure out how much are you actually paying per user in your licensing. If I'm buying 19,000 licenses for Freckle, and it's $220,000 a year, that's around $11.50 per license. But if I'm only using 10,000 licenses out of that 19,000, well, I'm suddenly paying a lot more per license. And so that's what this is helping you find. It's allowing you to find, are we getting our money's worth for what we're paying for? Do we need to cut back on licensing? Or no, we don't need to cut back on licensing, but maybe we need to do some training. And that's where that next step comes into play. If we need to do some training, what I can do is I can jump into apps. I can go find the app that I want to do some training on. Maybe it's iReady. And what's really neat here is I can go to my users, and this isn't going to load correctly. It is a demo environment. We have to anonymize data. But I would see all of my list of users. And I could go and pick from those top users, and I might reach out to them and, hey, would you like to do a peers training peers? And let's help our fellow teachers out and do some training that way and do some knowledge sharing, right? The flip side of that is I can flip it around and I can see my bottom users for an application, and I can see who we might need to talk about using the application more and spending more time in some trainings or having some targeted trainings that way. So we do have some tools inside of Classlink that aren't as specific to our BenQ panel here anymore, but our roster server will allow us to add users that do not have enrollments. That's the big difference between a traditional teacher or an administrator. Neither one of them is a technical administrator, right? Most systems just see them as a user level. That user might be a teacher, that user could be a principal, but they're just a user. And so a lot of what rostering platforms look for is what users have enrollments, and we're going to pull those in. Our roster server is a very powerful and very configurable tool, and we can do things like our manual records that allow me to do things like add enrollments on a whim. I can quickly add an enrollment for a user. So if I have that teacher that is helping the aide at the high school that doesn't have enrollments of their own, but they're helping in all the different math classes, I can add that manually through Classlink, not affecting my SIS, but it affects everything downstream. So your online resources, your textbooks, things of that sort. The other side of that is maybe I don't need to add them in enrollment. Maybe that is a curriculum coordinator for a campus, and they need to be an administrator in iExcel. They need to be an administrator in BrainPop. So I don't want to add them in as an enrollment. When we get to our app section and we do our permissioning, we have some functionality that allows you to permission and share users as the user and not based on their enrollments. Since so many things are reliant on enrollments, we have to go outside of that logic sometimes to get our administrator users in. So to answer your question, we have a lot of flexibility there. A panel in this case is not necessarily the best way to change a lot of those configurations, right? But we definitely can.